Desperate to cling to power as his world fell apart, Saddam Hussein orchestrated a daring heist. He secretly seized an amount as huge as $920 million from Iraq's central bank in a final, audacious bid to secure his future. What would you do if everything you built was about to collapse? When power slips through your fingers, how far would you go? This story is one of secrets, betrayal, and a bold escape from the inevitable. As the Mastermind's plan unfolds, get ready for twists you'll never expect. Stay tuned. The story unfolds at the close of the year 2000, centered on Saddam Hussein, a man who rose from modest beginnings in the village of Al-Auja near Tikrit, where hardship shaped his early life. Born on April 28, 1937, into a poor Sunni Arab family, he ascended through the ranks to become Iraq's president in 1979. But his journey from those rugged beginnings to the heights of authority was far from smooth. As conflicts erupted and tensions mounted, Saddam found himself under growing pressure from the international community, with the United States leading the charge against him. His grip on power seemed unshakable to many, but beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. The sanctions, the economic collapse, and the constant threat of invasion were starting to take their toll. Saddam knew that his time might be running out, but even as the world focused on Iraq's weapons of mass destruction and the prospect of military action, Saddam had something else in mind. He wasn't just worried about survival in the short term, he was thinking about his legacy and his future beyond the battlefield. If the world was coming for him, then he needed to make sure he had the resources to either survive or escape. The only possible key to his plan was money. This heist, shrouded in mystery and packed with suspenseful twists and thrilling events in the dark nights of Iraq, could be one of the most exhilarating tales you've ever encountered. The question of where Saddam Hussein could secure such a massive amount of money for his grand scheme was clear, and the answer was undeniable. Deep within the heart of Baghdad stood the Central Bank of Iraq, a heavily fortified fortress that contained not just Iraq's national savings, but nearly $920 million in cash. This was Saddam's war chest, his last defense against the coming storm. Saddam had always been secretive about the location of his wealth, but he knew that if anything were to happen, if his regime were toppled, or if he was forced into exile, this money would be his lifeline. Hidden in plain sight, the vaults of the central bank held nearly $1 billion, an amount that could secure his future or help him finance a long-term escape plan. It was clear to him that if the world found out about this stash of money, it would become a target. So, he made a decision which no one could have possibly thought about. Thus, he decided that the money had to disappear, but the question is how. If you have been hooked so far, stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe because the mystery is far from over. Saddam's heist was no spur-of-the-moment gamble. It was a masterpiece of planning and trust. For years, he had been quietly planting loyalists inside the central bank, weaving a web of insiders who knew its every weakness. His inner circle, which was a mix of military officers, intelligence agents, and longtime allies, were handpicked for their expertise. They understood the bank's surveillance, its impenetrable vaults, and its rigid protocols like the back of their hands. When the time finally came, every piece of the puzzle fell into place, and the heist was executed with precision, leaving no trace of what had just taken place. And the plan? The plan was deceptively simple. During the chaos of the war's early days, when the eyes of the world were focused on military operations, Saddam's team would infiltrate the central bank and quietly remove the $920 million in cash. The money would then be hidden away, beyond the reach of both Iraqi officials and foreign governments. The operation was codenamed Crescent Storm, and it would unfold in the dead of night, away from prying eyes. The night unfolded as the first bombs of the US-led invasion began to fall on Baghdad. This is when the central bank, a symbol of Iraq's financial might, was about to lose its greatest treasure, miles away from the front line. Inside the heavily fortified walls of the bank, Saddam Hussein's agents began their operation with calculated precision. Disguised as civilian contractors, they seamlessly blended into the night shift, a group of workers accustomed to the late-night hours. For months, they had meticulously planned this heist, studying every detail of the bank's security systems and timing their moves to perfection. And now was the moment they had been cautiously preparing for. Soon after, the agents moved swiftly through the darkened hallways, each step deliberate and measured. They reached the control room first. Within minutes, the bank's advanced security systems that were once thought to be unbreachable were neutralized. Surveillance cameras blinked out of existence, the alarm system was silenced, and the electronically locked vault doors were expertly unlocked. This cleared the way for the agents who proceeded to the vaults. Inside, stacks of freshly printed Iraqi dinars were ready for transport. The men worked in silence, their every movement synchronized, as they began to load the money onto waiting trucks parked just outside the bank's gates. The quiet rustling of the bills was the only sound that broke the stillness of the otherwise empty building. Outside the bank, the trucks were loaded swiftly. Each vehicle was filled with millions of dinars, which meant that the currency would soon disappear into the shadows of history. As the agents finished their work, the vaults were emptied, and the trucks sped off into the night, leaving behind no trace of the monumental theft. As the trucks pulled away from the central bank of Iraq, the agents breathed a collective sigh of relief. The heist had been executed flawlessly, but the real challenge was just beginning. Saddam's agents knew that every move from here on out had to be as carefully orchestrated as the operation itself. The trucks were loaded with nearly 920 million in freshly printed Iraqi dinars, money that would either secure Saddam's future or vanish into thin air. The convoy moved through the quiet streets of Baghdad, avoiding the areas affected by the ongoing bombings and chaos. While the US-led invasion was underway, Saddam's agents were focused on something else. The trucks left the main roads and followed a series of hidden paths. They bypassed checkpoints and military patrols, heading toward a secure location, an underground warehouse on the outskirts of the city, known only to a few. By dawn, the trucks had reached the warehouse, and the money was quickly unloaded and stored in metal vaults beneath the ground. But where was this warehouse really located? The warehouse was in a nondescript industrial zone. It had been specifically chosen for its seclusion and its proximity to the borders in case the need to escape the country arose. The warehouse had been reinforced years earlier, so it can act as a secure hideout. Saddam's agents had prepared for the possibility of an invasion by setting up a network of safe houses, hidden routes, and underground facilities. Instead of moving the money by air or sea, which would have been too risky, they planned to move it in stages, keeping it hidden from both Iraqi forces and foreign intelligence. For the time being, the heist was over, but only for the moment. The next phase of Saddam's escape plan was already set in motion. As inevitable as it was, the news of the heist spread quickly in the days following the invasion. As the US forces moved deeper into Baghdad and took control of the city, the Iraqi government was crumbling under the weight of the invasion. As Saddam Hussein's downfall neared, there was a sense of urgency. The world was watching, and with the regime collapsing, reporters and investigators from around the world scrambled to find out what had happened to Iraq's huge amount of money. The disappearance of nearly $1 billion from the central bank was an enigma. Despite the chaos of the war, the heist appeared to have been meticulously planned, leaving little trace of the culprits. It wasn't long before conspiracy theories began to surface. Was it done by Saddam Hussein himself? Or had the money been stolen by his inner circle, who had grown increasingly disillusioned with the regime? No one could say anything for certain. What was clear, however, was that the heist had been part of a larger plan, one that involved securing Saddam's future and perhaps even his escape from Iraq. The US military, in the wake of Saddam's fall, quickly launched an investigation to locate the missing money. Special forces were sent on numerous missions to track down the assets, but their efforts were hampered by the fact that the money was hidden in plain sight, carefully concealed by loyalists who had anticipated the invasion. As Iraq descended into chaos, Saddam's supporters scattered to avoid capture, and the money vanished without a trace. It appeared that Saddam's war chest had been wiped clean. As the search for the missing funds intensified, the world's attention had finally turned towards the possibility that Saddam Hussein had planned a carefully orchestrated escape. With the vast reserves of money missing and his regime crumbling, many wondered if the dictator had slipped away with the stolen funds, either into hiding within Iraq or fleeing to another country entirely. But the question remained, how had he managed to pull off such a massive operation amidst the war? And where had the money gone? As the world wondered where Saddam and his vast fortune might have gone, a deeper, darker conspiracy began to unfold. Saddam's escape plan had been years in the making. It wasn't just about fleeing to a foreign country with his wealth. It was about creating an entire network to protect the stolen funds and safeguard his future. The money didn't just disappear. It was hidden in plain sight, moved through a network of secretive routes and clandestine operations designed to keep it out of reach. The vaults under the warehouse on the outskirts of Baghdad were just the beginning. Over the following weeks, Saddam's loyalists worked quickly and efficiently to move the money into a series of safe houses across Iraq. These locations, like the warehouse, were strategically placed in remote areas, far from the watchful eyes of foreign intelligence agencies and military patrols. The goal was to keep the money moving constantly, so it never really stayed in one place for too long. Saddam's inner circle, many of whom had worked with him for years, were in fact the key players in this operation. They knew the intricacies of Iraq's financial system, its networks of hidden accounts, and the global connections that could help move money undetected. Using a combination of covert banking systems and front companies, they began laundering the stolen funds through a series of transactions that would eventually send the money overseas. The network was vast, stretching into neighboring countries and even beyond the Middle East. Meanwhile, Saddam himself remained hidden within Iraq, using a series of safe houses and disguises to avoid detection. He had made arrangements for his escape long before the invasion, where his agents had already begun to forge false documents, ensuring that his identity could never be traced if he were to leave the country. The money, now scattered across the region, was being moved with such care that it seemed as though it had actually vanished into thin air. Despite the careful planning and execution of the heist, the network began to unravel as time passed. With the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime, the power vacuum left behind created chaos and uncertainty. This mainly happened because the loyalists who had once trusted Saddam and his vision began to turn against him as the pressure mounted. Some sought to seize the money for themselves, while others were betrayed by those who they thought were their allies. As U.S. forces began to track down Saddam's remaining supporters, the complex web of safe houses and front companies started to collapse. Agents who had been trusted with the task of guarding the stolen money were arrested or killed, and the locations of the hidden funds were slowly exposed. The money, which had once seemed like an impenetrable fortress, was now at risk of being discovered. Saddam, aware that his grip on power had slipped away, made one final attempt to escape Iraq. He had a network of allies ready to smuggle him out of the country, but time was running out. The U.S. military was closing in, and it was clear that his chances of evading capture were slim. As his supporters scattered, the stolen money began to surface, small portions here and there, each one less than the original total, but still significant enough to be of interest. The world would never know exactly what happened to the remaining $920 million. Some say it was hidden in a series of international bank accounts, slowly funneled into global markets. Others believe it was lost forever, buried in secret locations never to be found. But one thing that remains certain is that Saddam Hussein's heist was one of the greatest thefts in modern history, and its legacy remains shrouded in mystery. As Saddam Hussein was eventually captured and put on trial, the mystery of his missing fortune lingered. Though the bulk of the stolen money was never recovered, its impact was undeniable. The heist had been executed with such meticulous care that it left behind an enduring legend, a shadowy tale of betrayal, secrecy, and a dictator's desperate gamble for survival. To this day, the true fate of Iraq's missing $920 million remains a subject of speculation. Some believe that the money was hidden in remote regions of the Middle East. while others think it was laundered through international financial systems, never to be traced. Whatever the case, Saddam's last gamble continues to intrigue and mystify, a testament to the lengths a dictator will go to secure his legacy and his future. The story of Saddam's heist is not just a tale of stolen money. Rather, it is a chilling reminder of the lengths a dictator will go to secure his legacy and his future. But the money he stole and hid remains a testament to the shadowy world of international finance and the legacy of one of the most infamous leaders in history. If you enjoyed this thrilling mystery of the stolen money, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.